Good afternoon. Today is the 18th of November. I'm in a secret location somewhere on the south coast, and it's time to answer some viewer questions from my video last week. Just for your information, this is the fourth time we've done a question and answer session, so it could be that I've answered a question in the past that you want to see, and yes, it might be in one of the other videos that we've done. So yes, by all means take a look at those first if you want to, or don't, I don't really mind. And we'll get into what some of my wonderful viewers have asked me about. Well, I don't know yet, we'll have to take a look. First question is one of my regular viewers, Steve Staff, and he says, my question is, on a £1,500 budget, would you buy an MX-5 or an MGTF? Gosh, that's an interesting question. Having just reviewed an MX-5 on my channel, I realised that the video's not gone up yet. It will do at some point. I quite like the MX-5. I think it's a great car. I can see why so many people have them and why so many people on YouTube buy them for their channels or whatever to have fun. In terms of the MGTF, if you've got a car that is pre 2003 and doesn't have the round key fob, then generally those cars tend to have better electrics. The TF, of course, is a steel sprung car. It's not the hydrogas MGF, which was an earlier car. They tend to have driving positions are a bit funny. I mean, the MX-5 has a very nice driving position. I've not tried an MGF or an MGTF, but I've heard the driving positions aren't particularly good in them. If you've had the head gasket properly fixed on an MGTF or an MGF, then that's very good news, because they are a problem, but they're not actually that difficult to fix, not as much as some other problems you might have on a car. So yes, I think I probably have an MX-5, but if anybody wants me to review their MGTF, obviously I'm prepared to change my mind about that. The next question comes from Huda Buddha. I do apologise if I got that wrong. He says, I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts on a Rover Tu16 coupe with the K-Series engine? Well, I actually reviewed a Rover coupe of that particular generation, a Rover Tu20 coupe. It's a 1993 Rover Tu20 coupe with the 136 horsepower 2-litre T-Series engine in it. Now, Rover did change the engines in the Tomcat, which is another name for the 200 coupe, later in the life of the car. And after 1996, the most common engines would be the 1.6K series with, it's about 110 horsepower or 120, I think, in that. I can't remember exactly. It's somewhere in that region. And then the 1.8 VVC engine out of the MGTF, which is about 143 horsepower. So we're talking about the post-mild facelift they did about 1996, when they changed the interior of the Tomcat to fit in with the newly released R3 type of 200. Well, I quite like the Rover Tomcat. The rear space is pretty limited. The ride in the car that I drove, which was courtesy of Mr. Matt Richardson of Furious Driving, was pretty hard, but the suspension was actually broken at that particular time, so that probably goes some way to explaining it. I love Rover R8s. I had a Rover Tu16 SLI from 1995, although mine was registered in 96, so they don't quite match up in that way. Mine was the Honda engine 1.6, not the K-Series. But I really like them. I think they're absolutely brilliant. They drive really nicely. I like the big sunroof you got on them. I've had 6 Rovers. I think they're brilliant cars. They are still incredible value for money too. Ben and Annabelle from Planet Auto have asked this question. Where do you see your channel in 2 years? That's a difficult question. One of the things I mentioned in my last video is that every time we make an episode of Two Jacket Reviews, it costs about £250 to film and edit, and that's because we use professional people with professional equipment, like Matt Richardson, Furious Driving. He's got proper microphones, proper cameras, tripods, car mounts, all that kind of stuff. Mr. Frank's got a nice tripod, gimbals, proper microphones, proper audio. It's a lot better than if you know, some of the car reviews you see on the internet, they're literally people just using a phone, and that's about it. And the channel depends on whether that's a problem or not. There are certain channels like Ian Seabrook Hubnut, that's not really a problem. That's a style he does them, and it's brilliant. But when I started the channel, I didn't want to quite go that direction. I wanted to make them sort of properly professionally produced, and the best way to do that is not to do it yourself. You don't know what you're doing, which I still don't really. It's to get someone in who does, and I think the quality is a lot better on them because of that. Now, because the channel's not monetized, I don't have enough subscribers to do that, and I don't know actually how much revenue it would generate. It could generate virtually nothing. If I were to monetize it, once I go over 1,000 subscribers, it could generate a lot. I don't really know. I'm not sure at the moment. But I'd like to actually put more videos out. But at the moment, my lady wife and I can't really afford to do that because we have to pay a lot of money towards the channel. It's basically, you know, funded by us. So we would like to, you know, buy new cars for the channel and run them and show them to you, but at the moment we can't afford to do that because we're putting all this money into True Jacket reviews at the moment, and that means we can't actually change our car at the moment, or either of them. So once that we overcome that, I don't quite know how that is. Somehow maybe I get more clients, and then we can afford to do more stuff. I don't know, but that's essentially what I'd like to do, is to make more of those, make the channel content better, but it does require money, and you know, at the moment we're having to be very careful about that. HipFind asks, what would you recommend as an older, interesting, ultra low emission zone exempt used car, which are older than a cut-off but are exempt? This is a fascinating topic. I've actually got a video called I Was Wrong About the Ultra Low Emission Zone where I cover this very subject. What you'll find is that actually a lot of cars made before 2006 are ultra low emission zone exempt. I'm talking about petrols. I'm not talking about diesels, because diesels were not exempt from the ultra low emission zone in London before September 2015. So we're just talking about petrols for now. The Rover 25 that I had, which is a 2003 Rover 25 1.4 IL, that was ultra low emission zone exempt, as are virtually any Rover with the K-series engine. That'll be the 1.8 turbo, and obviously the smaller ones, it would be the 1.4 or 1.6 K-series engines. After 2003, when they made various changes to the range, and of course it'd be MG at the time because they were the same company, of course, those are ultra low emission zone exempt. Obviously you have to check the government checker, the ULEZ checker. You can put it into Google and that will tell you whether your car is exempt or not, but those are interesting cars to have. Rover 75, for example, but it has to be the 1.8 or 1.8 turbo and made after the middle of 2003. Other cars I've seen that are exempt, the Audi A4 Cabriolet from 2004 that one of my friends once had, that's ultra low emission zone exempt. They're not that expensive actually. A nice one of those is about £1,500 to £2,000. Nice car to have for that sort of money. Then sort of others that I've seen, Volvo S60, a lot of those are ultra low emission zone exempt. Lexus IS 200. We're talking cars here anywhere between £800 and £2,000, so not a lot of money for things like that, and some of them are luxurious and very nice. So yes, those are some of the examples, but there's loads of them. By all means, just put a registration number that you see for an advert into the ULEZ checker if you're unsure, and that will tell you. But it has to be cars generally made after 2001 or 2002. It doesn't really work before that. But yes, a lot of cars made before 2006, if they're petrol, may well be compliant with the ultra low emission zone, but it is on a case-by-case basis. Andy G, another one of my regular viewers, asked me this absolutely brilliant question. How many cars have you owned, and are there any you really regret selling? Well, The fact is, I've actually made a video about this topic already. It's called How Many Cars Have I Owned? Funnily enough. And that was made quite a while ago, actually. So I just recommend looking at that. I haven't really got the time to go through all that again, because we need to keep this video to a reasonable length. So I'll put that in the description below so you can take a look, and hopefully that'll be interesting for you. Are there any I regret selling? Yes, definitely. The Chevy Cruze petrol that I had, maybe I shouldn't have sold that, because then I bought a diesel and the value fell through the floor, so possibly I shouldn't have sold that. The Triumph Dolomite 1500 SE that I had, one of the first cars I had, maybe I shouldn't have sold it, but at the time I couldn't really keep it. It wasn't reliable or practical enough to keep it, so I had to sell it. The Rover Tu16 Alive, I've already mentioned in the video, that I had, I did find that difficult to sell. I love Rovers. I've had 6 Rovers, and that was a bit of a problem. But yes, I think those are the main ones that spring to mind at the moment. Stanley Leopard, who is one of my longest standing viewers, has asked me a very interesting couple of questions. First question is, following your recent contact with MG Motor UK, yes, they have given me a couple of press cars, and I was blessed to be invited to the launch of a ZSEV with Planet Auto back in July. Do you think there'll be an improved MG3 anytime soon? Well, they've just facelifted the MG3 within the last year, and I think the new model, which they're going to come out with, is scheduled for introduction about 2021 or 2022. So there's a couple of years left on that. Now, the platform the car is based on at the moment was introduced in about 2010 in China, so it probably is a bit overdue, but yes, I don't think they'll do too much else before then. I could be wrong. I'd love to see a 1.0 turbo engine in the MG3, or the 1.3 turbo engine that's just gone into the facelifted MG ZS in China, but I don't know if they'll do that or not. Stanley's also asked me a second question, which is, would you consider producing a video on how best to sell a used car privately, including potential pitfalls and dangers? Yes, I can do that, and I will be doing that very soon. Matt's Beamer, another regular viewer, has asked this question. I've just realised that MG makes a pickup truck for some markets. Yes, it's a rebadged LDV model. I know you're not a man who likes big pickup trucks. Yes, that's right. I'm not a massive fan of them, to be honest. But do you think the MG pickup could do well in the UK? I don't know. So the Great Wall Steed, that was a cheap pickup that was on the market earlier this decade, that finished sales, I think, in 2018. That was very cheap, though. It's not a bad thing. I don't know. I just had zero market presence, I think. Sanyong Musso, that's another quite cheap pickup. That's done pretty well. I don't really know, to be honest. It's a bit of an unknown thing, and I'd be far more inclined to think that would do better under the LDV badge, which has been introduced recently with the LDV Maxus V80. That's kind of similar to the old Maxus they used to make in the mid 2000s. So I don't think we'll see an MG pickup. It's probably going to come under the LDV brand, which the parent company of MG own anyway. So yes, it's more likely to come under the LDV brand, if at all. My final question comes from Trabally, who's another of my regular viewers. This is a fascinating one. Okay, it's 2005 and Rover is going into bankruptcy, which did happen. It happened in April 2005. You have a choice to make. Who would you like to see save Rover between Toyota and Volkswagen? Integrated sister company, and knowing all you do know why, in hindsight, who would have done a better job and why? Oh my gosh. I really don't know the answer to that question. Obviously, we can look at Skoda and Seat and see what happened with them. Seat was the first one VW bought out of the two, and by 1991, the first Toledo, was based on the Mark II Golf, and there wasn't really much Seat engineering in that at all. So Yes, that's one thing I can say. A lot of the engineering before Volkswagen took over was actually from the Fiat stable, and the Seat Marbella was originally a Fiat Panda, or Seat Panda. We had to make some minor changes due to legal issues in the 1980s to it, but it was very closely based on the Fiat Panda. Same thing with the Seat Malaga, which was based on the Fiat Strada, I think, actually, but quite different. And then, they had a version of the Strada themselves as well. I can't remember what Seat called it. I think they called it just got the Seat Ritmo. I can't remember. So that's what happened with them. Toyota, I don't know. Toyota have made a lot of sort of collaborations over the years. They've got one with Subaru at the moment to make the BRZ and the Toyota GT86. They used to make a car called the Geo Prism, which was a rebadged Toyota Corolla in America, sorry, under I think NUMMI. Numi, that was some kind of manufacturing alliance that they had. There's other examples as well, but I don't know whether they would have done anything like that with Rover, or whether it would have just kind of been ushered in and sort of swallowed up. I mean, Daihatsu's kind of swallowed up by Toyota now. They just badge their cars, based on different, markets as Toyotas or Daihatsus. So they're not that different in some ways. Obviously, Daihatsu's not sold in Britain anymore. I like to think in some ways, though, that they might do a similar thing if it was Volkswagen to what they did with Skoda. They came into Skoda in the early 1990s, and the first car we got was the Felicia, which still had Skoda engines in it and was based on the floor plan of the old Favourite, which was not designed with any Volkswagen help. But then we had the Octavia, which was the first car ever to come out with the Mark IV Golf chassis, which was in a huge load of other cars too. So I don't know. I mean, who knows? I really can't answer that question. Whether to choose Toyota or Volkswagen. It's too difficult to say. With that really. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to be able to give you an answer about that. Just put yours in the comments below. So I hope you found that video to be enlightening. We might do another question and answer video at some stage. This one's been a very long one, and I apologize if it was a bit long, but some of these issues that you've brought up are very interesting, and it looks like we're going to be doing a whole second video on one of the questions that's been asked. So it's obviously a very fruitful thing. So thank you ever so much indeed for watching once again. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I've also got a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting, and my website is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching.